So now we're going to do a stay stitch around the whole top of the waistband. That's going to keep it from stretching out too much. You know, as we put on our waistband, it is, sized to fit this exactly. So if it gets stretched out at all, you're going to have a hard time fitting it in there. So that's what we're doing here. And in hindsight, I would have probably added my belt loops as well here. However, we hadn't finished the instructions yet, and I kind of was moving quick.
Okay, so you can see here we've got our waistbands, and they're all interfaced and pressed. We've already done that, so that looks nice. We've got 2 of each one, and so this curved area right here is our back seam. So we want to take 1 of each one of these guys. I got to take the bottom one. Okay, this is going to get matched and sewn. I'm just going to put a clip just to hold it together, because we're going to go over to the machine. So take 1 of my shorts. So you'll see it's a little bit shorter. That's right, because this is for our fly extension. Okay, and we'll go seam these at 1/2 inch.
So now I have pressed that seam open that we just sewed, and now we are going to attach, we're going to sew our waistbands together. So we are going to match those center back seams, and then I'll put a clip there to keep sure that those stay matched. And then you can see along this curve, there's a big curve on the outside and then a smaller curve on the inside. And that's what we're going to be sewing, is that smaller curve. Okay, so that smaller curve is the very, very top of the waistband, so where it hits your back. And then that bigger curve on this waistband is where it hits the pant. So I know that can be a little confusing when you've got a curve in a waistband, but that's a good, rule of thumb. So we're stitching this 1/2 inch, just trying to keep a nice consistent stitch. And when you get to those corners, you're going to make a nice point on that. Yeah, that's it. Here we go at the corner.
So the next thing we're going to do is we've sewn our waistband together, so we're going to clip the corners here. There's a lot of bulk there in that corner. I'll even clip it a little bit this way as well, especially with denim and canvases. You want to make sure you get that trimmed out well. Okay.
So once you've got it clipped, you're going to use your fingers to kind of press it, and you're going to use the tip of the iron to get in there and, press that seam as best you can. And then we can use our bone folders here in the corner to punch those out, just like that. Make a nice sharp, nice. Anytime you've got a point, you want to work to make it as sharp as possible. So in the bone folder there, and then after we've done that, we'll give it one final press flat.
Right, so we're going to take out those teeth, and our seam allowance is 1/2 inch here, and we're just going to go actually just an 1/8 inch below that, which is 5/8, and that's where we're going to take the teeth out to. So you can see that mark is how we're going to take teeth out. So there, and we'll mark the same one over here. Okay, and that'll make sure we don't catch it. All right, so
you can see we use the corner of these nippers to just kind of get in there and bite off those teeth, basically. You want to be careful not to get too, you don't want to break the tape, the cloth tape that's holding those metal teeth. And so you get the knack for it. It takes a minute sometimes, and then you start to get kind of a flow for this. So we've got our belt loops now cut, and so we're going to pin these in place at the notches and then the center back mark. And we'll go ahead and stay stitch these, at the machine. It's just kind of a tack to keep them on there so we're not trying to hold them in place as we put on our waistband, which is the next step. Again, I could have done this when I did the stay stitch, and I will for the next pair.
And so we want these to be nice and flush here, but to get in here and do this properly, we kind of have to push all that stuff out of the way. So you can see they still line up and everything. And then we'll put a clip there. And then we'll go to our next notch is at the side seam, and I'll put a clip there. And then moving around, the next place we'll match up is the center back. It goes right here. And you can see we're doing right side of the what's this called? Waistband to the top of the pant. To the wrong side of the pant is what we're doing. So from the inside of the pant. So if you looked at it from the outside, you see it's like this. Okay, and then again, the next notch will go to our side seam. And then this final one will come all the way. And again, we're doing that kind of same thing where we make sure it's matching here on the edge. And then we have to open it up a little bit. And I push that seam allowance out of the way. And then I'll just make sure that's matched up there. I'll put a little clip right there to hold that all together. Okay. This is a little bit of a wrangling situation as you get in here. You kind of have to open up this. It's already stitched closed, so it's kind of tight. I push all that seam allowance to the back, okay? And just get it, you want to get as close as you can. Okay. And then I'm going to do a little tack for the back stitch. And then I can kind of start to flatten out my material a little bit more. You might have already done this in our instructions. We're doing a little bit different than I think our instructions might say here, but this is going to be 1/2 inch. It's the same seam allowance as you used here on your pant. So I'm just going to go through and press this down. You can kind of see I always start just like with a finger press. Just because then that's going to be a little easier when you go to top stitch. Johnny and I were just talking about, the ways that she's learned and the ways I might do it if you're more advanced sewer is to do it without pressing this actually and just fold as you go, because you got that nice stiff seam where the two waistbands hit each other. You'd probably be fine to fold it as you go. So that's kind of a comfort level thing. The next thing we're going to do is we've kind of got it's pretty thick in this area where all these waistband and everything's coming together. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually trim this down a little bit on both of those. We're just trimming this seam allowance that's on the edge there. Oh, oops, missed one. Just kind of fold it back. Okay, then
So here I'm going to kind of get in here again and, get all these points turned. And then I kind of realized I need to hit it with an iron again there at that seam. I think I missed that. So I'm kind of pressing that seam open and away from itself before we flip this waistband.
so we've got this 1/2 inch pressed up right here, and what we're going to do with our fingers is that we're going to press that down, make sure that's really a nice fold, because what we're going to do here is that we're going to keep that fold and we're going to make this as tight as possible around this edge. Oh, I lost my point there. You can just get back in there. Okay, and then you want this to be, it can get bulky, so it's a little bit tricky here. But you want that to be as flat as possible around that corner. You have a clip. Uh-huh.
Now we're going to get this under the machine, and we are basically going to stitch along this fold line. I mean, one reason why we did the waistband this way, where you sew to the inside first, is that when you do this final stitch, you're actually looking at what you're sewing at. There are some times when we have you stitch in a ditch or stitch on the back side, and it's just a little bit harder to get a nice finish when you do that. So this way of putting on the waistband, you're actually sewing from the front side, looking down at it the whole time. So it gives you a nice edge stitch there.
So next we're going to stitch around the rest of the waistband, and the only tricky part about this really is at that belt loop. You've got that double folded, and you'll see I'm kind of using my seam rippers at one point. I definitely use my fingers to kind of hold that thing, hold those in place. One trick is to really get your foot on that piece before you start stitching it. Otherwise, sometimes it can kind of shift it forward. So again, you see I'm using my seam rippers to kind of push that in there. Sometimes if you're having a really hard time, you can use something called a hump jumper, which you can find online, or you can make your own with a piece of cardboard or leather, to help with this. It's really just kind of being patient and turning your flywheel if you need to sometimes on this. Walking it over, you don't want to break a needle. It's really easy to break a needle in this place, especially when if you're forcing it through. So just go slow when you go over those really thick layers like that.